Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining us once more for our grand finale, which is our panel discussion. We've had a really amazing weekend. We've had three excellent speakers: Felecia Datus of Center for Online Evangelism. We've had Kirk Nugent, the host and producer of How It All Works. We've had Abbigale Comfort this morning, Be of Good Comfort Designs owner and creative director. And today we are bringing them all back. And we also have two special guests who I'll mention later. And I just want to recap some of the points that stuck out to me over these few days. So something that Kirk Nugent said, which I think is really relevant: when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where your power is. So I know it's been a crazy several months since March. Our churches shut down. Churches that had previously not been online were suddenly forced to figure out, okay, how do we get online? How do we reach our church members and try to reach a broader audience using live streaming tools? Which tools do we use? And I'll say from my perspective, several of our churches have risen to the occasion, gone above and beyond, been very creative in the things that they're offering to church members. And I personally am looking forward to seeing that momentum online continue to grow. And I believe that it will with the tools that we have gained over this past weekend. And I will just say as well, so some other things that we learned this weekend: we have to identify where we are currently, who we are, and who God has called us to touch. We have to be willing to try. So something that was really fun that Kirk did in his presentation, he asked people, if your remote control stops working, what will you do? And, people came up with different ideas, like check the batteries, turn it on and off, ask my child to figure it out. But anyway, his point of asking that question was just that we have to be willing to try. The online world can seem scary. We might think, well, I'm not a tech person, I can't do it. But the only thing that is separating us from the tech people is the willingness to try. The other thing is, all three people said we have to have a strategy that centers around our audience. So it's not just putting content out there and hoping that, people like it. We have to know who our audience is and then target them directly, just like Christ's method. Also, IT, design, and media ministry are a ministry. So that is a key word: ministry. So people who go into those areas need to be spirit-filled, and they need to be constantly getting their power and their inspiration from God. Because if you are not filled with the Holy Spirit and you're trying to reach out to people using these different methods, you will fail. So that is the number one key. Even before all the technical skills that you can learn, you can always go on YouTube. We talked about YouTube University, but before YouTube University, get on your knees and ask God to really reveal to you how he wants to use you in these different areas. Also, we talked about an entering wedge. So you might be tempted to just hit people hard with the gospel, like, oh, come to my church. Oh, you need to, study the Bible. You need to do this or do that. But in this world, that is not always appealing to people. And we have to find topics that they are interested in that will draw them in. That could be health, it could be finance, it could even be natural hair, as we learned from Felecia. And we learned that visual content beats text. And we learned that design is really critical, especially web design. You have to have a website, and you have to be mindful of the content that you have up there, the visuals. Make them appealing so that people feel welcome. Just like if you invite somebody to your church, you want your church to be appealing. You want it to look like it's kept up, like people care about it. So make sure that you take care of your online presence as well. And don't be afraid if you find that in your church you don't have the skill set for web design or any of these other things, to actually outsource those skills, because that's why we have professionals. So those are some of the things I can say that I've learned so much. And I'll actually ask you to drop in the comments what you have learned over this period of time. So I will just move on to our speakers. actually, before that, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you are viewing from our Facebook group, make sure that you visit streamyard.com/Facebook to identify yourself in the comments. Also, take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook channels. If you do so, then you'll be the first to get notifications on what's coming next. So we'll move on to our panelists and we'll be showing their bios. So I've introduced the first three already, but we have two special guests, and this is very exciting. So the first one is Bryant Taylor. If we can just see his bio. So Bryant Taylor is known as the tech guru. I actually first met him at Society of Adventist Communicators because he had a tech talk where he talked about all the current tools that you could use for media ministry. And since then, he's been very supportive of my own ministry. And he's now the president of the Society of Adventist Communicators. So I'm really grateful that he took time out of his busy schedule to be here. And then we have Robert Kennedy. So Robert Kennedy is a keynote speaker and a trainer in leadership communications. So he's worked with organizations like the US Coast Guard, Barnes & Noble, Panda Restaurant Group, etc. And I haven't known him very long, but I can tell you that even in the lead up to this session, he was very helpful. We did a run through just to test our tech, and he was the one who gave me some advice on how I could improve my tech. So just from that interaction, I saw that he really knows his stuff and he's generous with his information. So I'm grateful that he is here as well. And we're just going to bring the speakers in and have them say something about themselves. Just actually, while you are introducing yourselves, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, how have you seen church change since COVID-19, basically, since we were all forced online? What are some of the biggest changes that you have seen?
Not everybody at once, right?
I know.
What we had, one of the comments that was made prior to us going live was that we are seeing a much more pronounced and evident presence of the church online in many different ways. And we're seeing ministries step out of the box and just try and maybe in some instances fail, but try again. So, I mean, that's been very encouraging to see as well. There's from a media standpoint, working at a church as a media director, there's many things that I'm certain many media people wanted to have done long before the pandemic. But we're seeing inroads to where those things can be done and have the support of the entire church, essentially, with very little prompting. Everybody's trying to figure out, how do we do this? So it's been an exciting time.
Yeah. I think what was once secondary is now primary in terms of how church is delivered. I think there was a mindset of church is this way. The main piece, the main dish, the main course of this entree is what happens inside these four walls, the praise and worship, the sermon, all of the other things that go with that. And now we're saying, my goodness, that's not necessarily the main thing. That's not necessarily what brings people together. That's not what drives our Christian community. There's something much greater than that. And now we've got to figure out these different methodologies, and what was referred to as the streaming or the online campus previously is now the thing that we have to put front and center and see how we can feed people even better than we did before.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has definitely taken place is there is a recognition now of the people who make it happen. The people who once were in a booth in the back room somewhere on the side of the church that nobody knew who they were, they didn't really know their faces. Now they are the superstars of the church. They are the people that now receive texts on Sabbath that say, hey, thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're making this happen.
It's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that a lot of churches now are taking this opportunity to be more creative with their evangelism. You know, they have to take it out. We're not in the churches right now, so we have to find other ways to reach the people. So I'm finding a lot of churches are branching out and finding different ways that they can interact with with people online.
Yeah, and I love that we in that creativity and trying to be innovative, right? We see the low tech informing the high tech, right? Because we have to kind of go back to the basics and figure out, as you said in your presentation, Abbigale, who is the target audience? Who are we really trying to reach? Is it everyone, or is it young people? Is it middle age? Are we trying to reach single mothers? You know, how does I was going to say how it all works, but how does it all fit together for us to be able to achieve the goal of reaching people with the message of Christ? So it's amazing to see, and very encouraging for sure. I thought maybe Felecia was going to say something, but I see some folks are engaging in the comments already. So yes. I just wanted to make mention that if you have questions, this is the time. So we want to have you send us those questions as quickly as you can, so that we can engage with them. This is Q&A time, so this is all for you guys.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff there already. I see Allison Down has a great question about techies who have found their workload increasing exponentially. Is there any help or assistance for those of us who know virtually nothing about websites? And that's an amazing question, because, as I said before, people who were not that important before, and I hate to say it that way, but technologies that were not that important, or churches that kind of figured, listen, we don't need to invest our time in that thing. Now you're being forced to do it in the season when you absolutely need it. And so you don't have time to fail at it. You don't have time to practice to get it right. You've got to have it there. So if you weren't focused on it before, what help is there for you? So I guess the big answer for that is, number one, some of the platform that a lot of us are on right now, YouTube, and I know that does not minimize the time investment that it takes, but the YouTube is a great source for that.
Yes.
You can also look at some of the conferences that have communications, and Brian can tell you this, the Society for Adventist Communicators has a ton of people who are website gurus. So there's a lot of resources within our church community already. We just have to be willing to reach out to them. And I know that is scary sometimes, because maybe it's a small church and you don't have a large budget, and you're figuring, my goodness, our budget for the entire year is like $150.
Oh.
Right? So how do we make this happen? How do we make this happen? Right? And so, yeah, it's a big ask, but it's right now is the time really just to reach out for help to any place that you can, starting with Society for Adventist Communicators, YouTube, and other resources.
But Christelle,
Yes.
I think that question, there's a secondary question that Allison puts there, and she's saying, any chance of obtaining a list of potential experts to whom we could go? And I think that's a really good idea.
It is a good question.
And maybe something that you kick up to your union, and maybe even to the division as well. BT, maybe it's something that you can also champion as in your role as Society of Adventist Communicators leader, is to begin to start putting together this list. I mean, I'm certain that Abbigale would want to be on that list. I know
for sure.
my wife would like to be on that list as well.
Yes.
With her business, she does web design, and she does, and we do media consulting. So we'd love to be on that list. But I'm certain that there are others. And as she said in her question, is like it is inundating. There's sometimes I can't keep up, honestly. But we recognize that there is a ministry component to what people are contacting us to do. And so because there's a ministry component, there's also a time component as well. So that list could really be a great idea, something that Ontario Conference, or maybe even the union or division, could champion and make available so that people can have a place to go to say, oh, these are people who not only, because we talked about this as well, these are not only people who have the skill sets but are mission minded and have who have a thus saith the Lord, because there's a difference.
So can I slap your hand for a second?
Yes, please.
Because I'm going to disagree a little bit. I'm not a big fan of the whole there's a ministry component to it. And because that's kind of code word for it's less money. We've got to accept.
No, I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not on that train.
All right, I wanted you to clarify that because
I'm not on that train.
And I'm not saying that we need to not understand where people are or where our churches are, where our ministries are with regard to the resources, the finances that they have accessible to them.
Right.
However, we've got to rethink, we've got to reset our minds a little bit, or how we operate, because as we're seeing right now, we have previously allocated funds to certain things that didn't necessarily drive ministry or didn't necessarily drive the information that people need for in order to have a closer relationship with Christ, right?
Right.
I think what I'm saying here is, from the ministry leader's perspective, maybe now is the time to begin having some crucial or serious conversations with our leaders about, okay, what is it that we ultimately want here? Mm-hmm. What's the ultimate result we're trying to achieve? And let's see how we can really marshal our resources behind that effectively.
Both human and financial. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So a question that has come up was, what would be a reasonable amount for a church to budget for digital evangelism? So it kind of builds on what you were just saying.
Well, I think this is a great time to do that. Years ago, I had a conference president that came to me and he said, "So you have to help us. You have to help us figure out how we can best use evangelistic funds." And there were guys who had anywhere from $1,500 to $22,000 for an evangelistic meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, my friend and I developed some things, and we said, so here's number one. Number one, go buy you a very good, and we gave them some couple of examples of laser printers. Rather than paying, X organization $5 a lesson, print it yourself for 75 cents. Get good paper, good printer, print it. And so we did those things. Now it is where churches will have budgeted whatever they budgeted this year for evangelism. Use that same money for online, for digital evangelism.
Talk to them.
So if the church has budgeted $10,000 for an evangelistic meeting, where they had, flyers and posters or whatever they were going to have in materials, put that money into a digital platform and digital evangelism. If you need to know how to do that or what to use, Felicia's there. She's the expert on that.
Oh, yeah.
She can tell you exactly how to do that. But that's one of the things that I'm doing at the church where I am. I am moving funds from things that we did for in-person so that we can bolster and build up the online presence, whether it's with equipment or platforms. But that's one of the ways you can do it. I'm just a big proponent of start with whatever you have. If you had $1,500 for evangelism, start with that $1,500. If you had $22,000 for evangelism, use that $22,000, because the gospel is not relegated to being inside four walls. We figured that out by force in the last 6 months.
So BT, how do you reconcile that though, BT, with knowledge or expertise in certain areas? Here's why I'm asking that, because if I've got $1,500 as a church or as a ministry, and we decide that we're going to spend it a certain way. So I'm looking at a question here specifically where somebody in the comments is talking about using Wix to develop websites, right? Because Wix is a free platform. But then when you go to a certain place, you cannot take the website with you, right? So sometimes you go free, right? Because that's the knowledge that you have. And then down the road, you're not able to build on top of that, or you're not able to grow in the way that you want, because you started in a place, and you end up spending more money because you didn't start with something that maybe you had to pay a few bucks for in order to really build on that. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes. So, in whatever I do, I have an overarching principle, and that is do it right the first time, so that you pay for it once.
Yeah.
Don't pay for the same thing 10 times because you still only have that one thing. Do it right the first time. And so I think the question the person asks is the list of experts, the people that they can pull on, and they can say, here's what we're trying to do. Let me ask this person, what should I be doing? Here's what I'm trying to get. Here's how much I have. What's the best thing that I can do right now with this? Knowing that I'm trying to build and to grow. So Robert, I think that's good, because I think a lot of times people say, well, I only have this little bit of money, let me do this. And then 2 months later, they're having to do it over because they couldn't build upon what they had.
Yep.
Right.
Right. Now we have a question from Wise Check. So it came in at 3:15. And it's directed toward Robert Kennedy. It says, how do we develop leaders in or out of the church while church is going on and there's little to no face-to-face interaction? So Robert and anyone else, if they have a point on that.
Yeah. How do we develop leaders in and out of the church while there's no... So the leadership development doesn't have anything to do with face-to-face interaction. Well, let me take that back. I wouldn't say it doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not solely dependent upon face-to-face interaction. So, for example, there are things like at our church, there's a group for young men mentorship called Young Warriors, right? During this pandemic, they still get together virtually. They still, the people that lead that still decide that they're going to pour into the young people so that there are some skills that they continue to develop during this time. So it may simply be, listen, I'm not going to wait until my church says we're going to either break into small groups or we're going to have a Sabbath school program. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a time and where I'm going to invite some people to it. So there's a lot of different things. It's really about two words: initiative and courage, right? Just deciding that what it is that we want to do, and then deciding that we're going to be able to do that. So I know that there's some training that goes along with that, and there are a lot of resources for the training, but leadership is not something that depends on only stating or only being in that face-to-face setting in the church. We can do that anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead. Did someone else want to add in? No? Okay, so there's a question from GT. So can we talk about using the creation grid as recommended from the GC? So anyone who can speak to that.
I saw this came up earlier, I think, in somebody else's section, and it's so using the creation grid. I mean, so they have some streamlined things there. They actually have templates that you can get for multiple different types of website platforms. They've got there's definitely some really good starter package type things that the GC has. I hope that's what you're talking about, and if it is, then I mean by all means, they're just trying to give you a start, but I don't think they were trying to be prescriptive in your creative freedom as a church, right? There's something that was said, I think it was in I can't remember if it was Abbigale but either way, one of the other presenters said, it may be good to have some navigation on your main page that directs people from who are visitors to a specific layout and feel, and then members to a different layout and feel. And I think that's such a really good point. And it just depends on what you're trying to do. I would actually take that idea another step further, in that maybe there is a specific thing that you and your congregation, your local group of believers want to achieve, and maybe it is that you just brand on that name. So if you're let's say Toronto I don't want to say it. You're Toronto North, okay? Toronto North, okay? I don't know if that's a church name. I apologize for using his example if there is. But if you're Toronto North, you have torontonorth.org, and that's your main church's website, and that tells people where you are, who you are. Of course, that you're Adventist, and that's where most of your members go to. But if you know that your ministry is to single mothers, of single immigrant mothers, okay, so then you have another site called something along those lines, mothers, immigrant mothers, or whatever, and that would be more of a site that's geared toward visitors. See, the whole idea, and I think we're just going to keep on coming back to this multiple times, is understanding who your target audience is, understanding who are you going after, who do you want to attract, and what types of things does that demographic go for, and making sure that you put your package in a place that it can be successful for them to click on it, for them to come through and say, yeah, this is what I'm looking for.
Okay. So there are some questions that came through quite a few times, I'll say. So we're going to touch on, we have a CCLI. So this is one of the pre-written questions. We have a CCLI and CVLI license along with a streaming license from CCLI. However, it is still unclear exactly what these licenses allow. Can you please clarify? So yeah, so that's a big issue for us right now, not understanding exactly, what the implications are of having these licenses, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So if somebody can speak to that.
Okay, so I guess in a nutshell, we'll do what they are. So
Yeah.
the CCLI is the license that gives you permission to present lyrics on the screen.
Yeah.
That's what CCLI does. The V is that for video. It gives you permission to present those lyrics that you have on your screen in your broadcast. That's in a nutshell what the difference between those two are. Now there's probably, I looked at some of the things in terms of clarifying it. The license doesn't give you the permission to stream or broadcast videos that you have not created.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you permission to do that. But if it's a video that you created, you're good to go. If it's a video that Kirk created and you don't have Kirk's permission, Kirk has the right to ding you on that platform for copyright infringement.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just some follow-up to that. So can a church record video that includes someone singing, can a church recorded video that includes someone singing music from a tract be posted on YouTube?
Someone singing from a track.
I know.
Yeah, from a music tract.
They're singing someone else's song.
Yes, that's right. And they're using a track in the background.
The CCLI should cover that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that the CCLI does cover that. There is a distinction between streaming it live and posting the video for people to play on demand.
Right.
But then there's also this whole covers phenomena. So people sing other people's songs all the time, and they just give they make sure that the description is there. I'm speaking specifically of YouTube. Facebook is a little more stringent. They will allow for you to do the live stream, and after the live stream is done, you need to take the video down.
Oh.
YouTube will allow you to leave it up, and they'll even put a little tag in the background of your YouTube account. When your videos list, it'll say copyright claim, and then you can engage with them where that copyright claim is concerned. But a lot of people will just put in the description of the video, here's whose song it is, here's who wrote it, here's the production group, and they give that there. And even, I can't tell you how many videos I've seen where somebody's like, I don't have the rights to this. And that's not a blanket cover either.
No.
But what I'm saying is there's an acknowledgement that this is not mine, and especially if you're doing a cover, right? Now, there's a whole other piece if you're just playing the song, the actual song from the CD or from the project, music project that somebody has done. Say if you have a Fred Hammond song. You take that Fred Hammond song, you have it playing in the background for your live stream. You're not singing it. You actually have the original recorded project playing in the background. You can CCLI, CCV. I always get the two mixed up, but those will cover you for live stream, but it definitely does not cover you for something that people can watch over and over and over again. There's a distinction there. I know that Abbigale had a good slide on that a little earlier today, kind of talked about some of those things as well.
Yeah.
So if I can piggyback on Kirk's, here to, I don't know who asked this particular question. Here is an example of that. So here, I guess we should do one thing. There's a difference between posting something and broadcasting it. We call this streaming, but the industry sees it as broadcasting. So there's a difference between those two. So if you're doing it live, for instance, and you're sending it out, it's broadcasting. So we had a church service, and it was during Sabbath school time, and I had my headset on, and I get a call, a desperate call from the control booth that our stream is dead, and there's a big message across the stream. And Facebook said your stream has been paused for copyright reasons, and I couldn't figure out what copyright reasons were because the Sabbath school teacher was standing up front talking, and I just couldn't figure out what it was. And then about 2 minutes later, it went away and the stream continued. So what I did was during the week, I went back to review that section, and what the Sabbath school teacher had done was they had a recorded video playing that they were using for illustration purposes. And it showed a scene of a guy and a young lady in a room talking. In that room, there was a radio playing in the background that had music playing on it. And they flagged it for the music that was playing in the background.
Yeah.
And so they stopped it, and they put this black screen, big white letters across it, which is the most embarrassing thing to ever happen during a live production. But it's those kind of things that you have to be aware of, that if it is music from someone else, that you run the risk of them flagging it and shutting down your stream for that period of time until that music stops.
Yeah. So I want to point a little bit further to that. I'm glad Kirk brought up the difference between singing a song and playing the original artist version of it. So in the world of copyright, when a musician registers copyright for their music, there are a couple of different copyrights that they have to register. One of them is for the lyrics and maybe the written version of it. They also have to register a copyright for the recorded project. So they get royalties and they get payments from both of these different angles. And so it's one thing for you to sing a cover in church. Your CCLI covers some of that, depending on if the song is in the CCLI library. But if you are just playing Fred Hammond in the background or in the video, as you mentioned there, you can and will get dinged for that. Yeah. So it's important to know those differences.
Right. So there are a few more questions around copyright. One from Jerson R. So it says, so if we are meeting via Zoom and live stream to YouTube and Facebook, there's a pre-recorded singing of someone that is using a soundtrack. What licenses do I need, and are they allowed?
The person is actually singing, not the. It's a video of somebody singing to a track.
Yes, that's
right. If I
right.
understand that correctly, I think that you're okay as long as you have CCLI.
Right.
Yeah. So let's kind of even be more careful here, Kirk. So we're looking for a one size fits all. We're looking for, can I get this license and make everything okay? The truth is, churches have been breaking the rules for a very long time. Right? And because we haven't been strung up on these big lawsuits by the artists, by the musicians, then we think a lot of things are okay. The truth is that yes, if you're going to be using pre-recorded soundtracks, pre-recorded music, there should be a check that takes place. Go into CCLI, go into Song Select, go into all of the different things, because the real way that things should happen, if they were going to stick to the letter of the law every time, is you would have to go to Harry Fox Agency to get a license for all of that music, to then reproduce it and sing it or put it in some sort of a recorded format. And that's just not, and that can be expensive. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely want to check in with, if you've got artists that are coming in and they're singing to pre-recorded tracks, you want to check on that. You want to check if your license that you have, CCLI, covers that type of stuff. And if not, I don't know if there are attorneys at the conference level that can answer some of these questions, but these are some of the conversations that we definitely need to have.
I can add on to that in regards to all of the questions and for licensing and so forth, because we get asked so many questions about it. You can go to sdadata.org. I don't know if this was mentioned before because I'm having technical difficulties following, but once you go to sdadata.org, there's a page specifically dedicated to copyright trademark basics. Right there are several resources that you can immediately download that will teach you more about copyright for your church and so forth. You can also, there is someone at the General Conference, an attorney, and this is what she specializes in, Jennifer Woods. And her email address is there on the site as well. So you can find all the information about copyright and trademark, photography issues, live streaming for your church, and all other information. So that's just a good resource to have that Jennifer Woods put together.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah, and I guess if I can jump just one, if I can, still, this pandemic has changed the game for a lot of things that churches are doing, and it has also changed the way companies operate. Case in point, for instance, so there are companies that you can get your graphics from, Ignited Media, Sermon Spice, a lot of those. And that allowed you to use their graphics to put on your screen in your church. They never intended for you to use their graphics to stream and broadcast. And so I use Ignited Media a lot. So the other week I went to get one of their little mini videos, and it said these videos are not allowed for broadcast. It said please check the catalog that shows those that are not allowed for broadcast. And it's because they are a repository of other creators' works, and some of those creators said, "Hey, no, they can show it in their church. I give you license for that. I didn't give you license for them to create a broadcast with it." So you have to kind of look very carefully now, even with graphics and some other things that we use without any question before.
Okay, so here's an interesting question by Chester Lewis. So thank you for that. Thank you for enlightening us on copyright issues. So from Chester Lewis, as we move more and more into the virtual world with ministries, what do you recommend as a good balance so that one does not lose that personal touch and become limited by the walls of technology? So I guess basically, how can we use everything we have in our hands, as we've talked about this weekend, to spread the gospel?
If I can answer that, Chester, that's a good question. The way that I choose to look at it is, how do you, for example, my family, I can't see them. So what I do is to, whether it's FaceTime or video calling on WhatsApp, or even my friends who live in the same place that I live, same country or same state, I can't see them all the time. So even though we are communicating and staying in contact with each other virtually, there is still that plan to meet up physically. And that's the thing that we need to remember, especially in regards to digital evangelism, that these digital strategies are by no means meant to replace the traditional things that we are doing. So if you do decide to start a YouTube channel, for example, or a podcast or an online small group, always try to remind your viewers or your listeners or your readers, we want to connect with you in our community of faith. Join our family after COVID, or depending on what your state or your country is doing. We would love for to meet with you for a dinner on Saturday, for lunch, having those kinds of meetups and reminding them that even if they cannot meet with you or your community of faith, encourage them. Find a community of faith, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in your area to meet up and so forth. So always remembering that this is a means to an end. The end, of course, is a relationship with Jesus Christ, introducing them to the love of Christ and so forth. But we want them to be a part of a body and to build relationship. All of these strategies are not the end; they are a means to an end. That's how I choose to look at it and view it.
Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So-
really good.
I'll
Go ahead,
use
Robert.
my dad's church. My dad is a pastor of a smaller churches, and smaller churches, it may be a little bit easier for smaller churches to get this right than larger churches. So they meet on Zoom, and then they go through. They have their church service. They do a lot of different things, and at the end of the church service, it's kind of a breakdown where they just ask each other, "Hey, what's going on? How's this going? I heard such and such was sick," and it's non-programmatic. They're just literally sitting there, free, having conversation.
Yeah.
And they do this for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes after the church service is done. So I mean, I say after, but it could be any time. Really, the point is to have some time that is just about connecting and not programmatic time. So
Yeah.
that is something that is critical. How can the large churches do this? Large churches then need to be very intentional about what small groups look like, right? So that they can then engage with the connectivity and not just people attending a service or attending a program virtually.
Yeah, it has been said multiple times. People are going to be even after COVID lifts and the restrictions lift, people are going to be far more comfortable meeting in smaller groups than they will be in larger groups.
Yeah.
So establishing a framework for your small groups even now, and then having them meet digitally, is going to help in terms of, okay, now things have been lifted and we're a little bit more free to meet. We had a meetup in a large parking lot for the baseball stadium here in Huntsville. Just at our cars, everybody sat kind of leaned on the back of their car, and we just kind of talked to one another. Still socially distanced, but we had an opportunity to really reconnect. We were just tired of Zoom. But I also want to just mention that there is a lot of people feel like the digital connection is not a real connection, and I want to make sure that we kind of dispel that a little bit. The tangible, real in-person connection, there's nothing to replace that.
Right.
But you can, I mean, I think that's the whole point of this conference. You can make a real connection with people online. And especially when they recognize that you and them have something significant in common.
Yeah.
If I have a struggle with lying, and I'm putting that out there, and I've created a group of folks who also have the same struggle, even if we've never met before, there's a very real bond, a very, very real connection that you have formed with those people. And so I think there's a space in between, if you will, right? So yes, there's this digital connection, and we don't want to lose the physical in person, but there is a very real connection that you can have with people around a specific issue, around a specific topic, around a specific interest. I think we talked about YouTube channels where people are talking about the gospel, animation. Some people are talking about hair growth. People have connections for random different things. I know one person who does candles, homemade candles, and she's got 6,500 followers on Instagram. But I'm saying people have connections for various different things, and those connections are very strong, very real, very deep. And some people feel like as the person is speaking, I could finish that sentence because I feel the exact same way. Yeah. So I just don't want to discredit that connection that people are making with others online.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
I also just wanted to add to that we should look at social media, or we can look at social media as just an extension of a phone call or an invitation that we would have sent out to somebody. So we're using social media to build the relationship, to start a conversation. But it doesn't stop there. Like the other panelists were saying, we still have to eventually meet up when the time comes, and to continue to facilitate that relationship.
Right. So I want to add into what both of you are saying, in that we've got to ask ourselves the question as well, what if we're here for a long time?
Yeah.
What if we're here for the next 5 years? I mean, the first real global pandemic that took place in 1918, they were inside of that for about 3 years, right? And so we've got to now not say, how can we get back what once was, but what can I do with what I have right now and create the best connectivity or the best experience possible? I mean, we're in this place now where we have such great opportunity. Our churches, the walls are wide open right now, right? We don't have the four walls. We're not limited to our communities anymore. We're not limited to the 3 mile radius around the church building. So we've got people that may be joining that like your church, and they happen to live in the Congo, or they live in Spain, or they live in South Africa.
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
How do we're not going to be able to physically connect with them. How do we create real, meaningful, engaging virtual connections with them that are sustainable and are long term? We've got to be creative and look at that and figure that out.
Yeah. So I hate to jump back in, but I couldn't agree with you more. I think that a lot of people are going to find themselves with that issue. With that great problem, if you will, after the pandemic is over. That people have been visiting and worshiping with you from literally all over the world, and then what do you do? And so this is where the question comes in. I think I asked this during the Q&A for my session. Is it a problem for you to have, for real members of your church that live somewhere else, and then you, through the Adventist network, if you will, connect them with a local group of believers that they can physically touch, but they're still part of your body online? Right? Because we're all, the Adventist network is large and vast. It's literally worldwide. So just because you have somebody that is fully locked in and engaged with you online in ministry from South Africa, does that then mean that they can't continue to be fully locked in and engaged in ministry with you while you connect them to a local group of Adventist believers there in South Africa? I mean, that's only to fulfill one piece of the puzzle. The other piece that you fulfill, to me, I think is still critical and still plays a huge role in that person's walk with Christ. So these are interesting issues that we will have to grapple with, because I think that even now, people are starting to develop an affinity and a connection, real tangible connection with these churches that they have been attending online for the past several months.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there were two things that disappeared when the pandemic hit. The first one was the meet and greet during church service.
That's true.
It disappeared, and our church suffered because it disappeared. So one of the things that our senior pastor did was she does the pastoral highlights kind of thing, and she said, so right now what I want you to do is I want you to reach out to somebody, text them, send them a Facebook message.
Excellent.
Do something with them, FaceTime them, do something. And this is in the middle of the service.
That's
and
phenomenal.
So we just put up a slide that simply says, reach out to somebody. And so during that time, members are texting each other, they're doing FaceTime calls, it's a minute long, but they're making connections there. The other thing that disappeared was the church dinners. In most places, they call it potlucks. And so, like Robert's dad does, there were a group of us who decided, hey, look, we haven't seen each other, we haven't talked to each other, we need to check in on each other. So we were on Zoom and we were checking in on each other just to see how everybody was doing. And people were eating Sabbath dinner. And we're like, man, that looks good. I want some of that. And so we sat down and planned an entire menu
Wow.
Told everybody to put it into go boxes. Here's how many families that are participating. Put everything into go boxes. You're gonna bring it. We're gonna meet at the church and outside. We have tables. You're gonna set it on the table, and every family goes through one at a time. So there's no contact with each other. We all grabbed our things up, put them in our bags, our boxes, spread out, and we stood there and talked for another 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are ways that you can still connect and have meaningful relationships in this time.
Yeah, yeah.
So important.
Real quick, 10 seconds. One of the things that we do as well is drive-bys. We literally make a list of people that we want to visit that Sabbath or whatever day it is, and we say, hey, we're coming by your house for like 5 minutes. We're just driving by outside, and we drive into the driveway. We wave, we jump up and down, we make noise, we act real crazy and silly, and we just pump the energy up so we have a good time with each other, and you know that really provides some energy and connection.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Actually, just on that note, I saw a drive-by graduation. So I don't know if your churches do this, but at least some of our churches, they recognize their graduates. And so this church, normally they will do it obviously in the sanctuary. They were not able to, but they had like a live stream graduation service. And then they give gifts to the graduates. So they had a drive-by where
That's good.
they had the graduates sitting like in rows socially distanced, and then they had people literally driving by, and like they had banners and they were just shouting out congratulations, and it was really great. So I've been blessed to just see how people have been rising to the occasion despite the challenges that we're facing right now.
Yeah, we did drive-through prayer. The members kept saying, I miss my pastor praying for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so, that we had 4 or 5 pastors who were there, and people drove through, and the pastor, they let their window down and with masks on, and they had a pastoral prayer with them. And people like, wow, I can make it through the week now. This really helped me. This is great. So there are, as you said, Christelle, ways that people have become creative to make sure that connection still takes place.
Right.
This is the blessing of Inreach and Outreach. And I think that it really should be, we need to free up our pastors and leaders to be able to do some of these very creative and very necessary things for Inreach. And then for those who can, as we have been talking about the whole conference, to really take a step out and do some of these outreach type things as well. Because everything that we've just talked about in terms of doing the potluck kind of a deal with the to-go boxes, that's things you can do in reach for sure. But I don't know that you'd want to invite somebody to that, right? So that's understanding and defining what the differences are, what the parameters are. How can we realistically do in reach and outreach at the same time or separately, and being effective in both. And I think there are a lot of pastors and leaders and shepherds that have really been intentional about being creative in ensuring that in-reach piece is not missed. I think we do have to be intentional about both sides of the ball. No doubt about it. Just like BT said, the people who just miss being prayed over by their pastor, that's not something that we should just have to go without because of the pandemic. There are ways that we can find to be creative, to fulfill that need in someone's life. But then how much more would it be for someone that you invite online? I think the name of the game, I've heard it said from others, is significance. When you can provide an experience that someone can have that allows them to feel significant, it really goes the distance. And it's something that's indelible. It leaves an impression. It's a touchstone. It's something that they will mark and say, this person did something specific for me. And I think Felecia said it in her section as well. That personal invitation, even online, or like BT was saying, during that quote unquote welcome section where you're doing FaceTime or whatever, it makes a difference. It leaves an impact. It's something that somebody knows that it wasn't just random. You didn't just post a flyer to everyone. Yeah. You came specifically to them and said, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, and I'm thinking that maybe we could do this together, even if we're doing it online.
Right. Absolutely. So just shifting a little bit to this question is, I'll ask Abbigale, but anyone who wants to jump in. So something that came up in the stream, in the comments earlier, was just when we were talking about having different audiences that you're targeting with your website. And the person asked, do we need to have a different website for each audience? Is there a way that you can target multiple audiences in the same website, or would you recommend having different ones? And how can you make your website appealing to non-Adventists? So that's a pretty broad question, and I'll actually throw it out to anybody who can answer.
So I don't think that you have to have different websites for your different target audiences. That can be costly for you and time consuming as well. So I would say, see how you can best utilize the website that you currently have, your one website, and design it in a way where I was mentioning that you have a page specifically for your new visitors. So they have a page directly for them. The language that you speak on there is relating to them.
Yes.
And then the other sections of your website, like say your activities and different things that you're having, would be for your main members. So your current members can go there. So I would say put everything onto one page. Onto one website, but the language that you speak is going to be tailored to the audience that particular page is directed to.
That's good.
What I want to encourage with audiences in regards to your website, just think of your website as your home. You have your living room, and then you have bedrooms. Let's say you have 4 or 5 kids. For those who can afford it, you have different bedrooms for each of those kids, and then you have the bedroom for the parents. And so the way that each of those rooms are designed is geared toward that particular member of the family. So remember, your website for your church is like the home that you are creating. And then each of those pages, as Abbigale mentioned, caters toward each of those members. So you don't want to have a separate house for your baby and a separate house for your husband and a separate house for your teenager. There's a way to put it all together, even with your church's Facebook page. I think it was either last year. One thing that Facebook is doing is that they're encouraging faith-based organizations to create groups. And you can have multiple groups based on different audiences. And it's just like different rooms in your house. And so the idea that I see a lot of churches, we have one page for women's ministry, and then we have a whole nother page for youth department. We can actually put all that together. Some persons might choose to do this where you have one page for the church, and then you can have different groups. So that's just an example where you don't need to have all of these various websites and groups for your church.
Yeah. So I'm not the deep expert in this, but I know just enough to be dangerous. Right. So we've got to use analytics in some ways to really help us with this process. Instead of just creating just the groups because we think that's the way that we've got to go, we can also look at what is already happening. So Facebook has something called the Facebook Pixel. And that is a little piece of data that you can put into your website, and it tracks information about the people that are visiting. So if you're checking the analytics on that, you can kind of get some sense of the demographics of who is visiting your website, how are they staying long. And this is exactly how Facebook targets ads towards people, right? Facebook doesn't have a bunch of different pages. They just have something that's working where they're able to say, okay, when Robert is on Facebook, here's the ad that we're going to target to him. When Kirk is on Facebook, here's the ad that we're going to target to him. That's because there are Facebook pixels in other sites like Amazon and other places. So when I visit those places, they know what my needs are and what my searches are and what I'm interested in. So we can utilize and we can leverage that same technology with our churches in order to figure out who are the people that are visiting, what are their needs, what are their interests, so that we can then create things that are targeted to them and will hold their interest.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so there's a question kind of piggybacking off of that. So in light of the live stream service, is it prudent advice to pay for ads that enhance the live stream content so videos are viewed by more than your immediate followers?
What is in your video? What is in your video that would attract others from that are not your immediate followers? If your content is broadly applicable, broadly interesting, then yes. Or if your content is targeting a specific audience, then you can target that specific audience with the ads so that you can get those eyes on your content. But the content is always going to dictate what you. I mean, if you have a video that's just talking about the announcements for your church, then don't pay ads for that.
Right.
If you got a video that's just telling people where to go to drop off shoes for a giveaway drive, maybe I don't know, maybe that might be something that might interest a broader audience, or maybe that kind of falls into the realm of kind of internal. So it's really going to be dictated by the content. I just feel like, especially anytime you're talking about making an investment, spending some money on something like ads, and I know that they're not that expensive, but I'm just saying, if you're going to make that investment, let's make sure that it's broadly applicable, that we're not in there, basically speaking to ourselves and hoping that somebody else will watch.
So, Kirk, are you saying that we have to be intentional about our church service content?
I mean, yeah. Honestly, I mean, so what is it? I don't know if it was Abbigale. I don't know who covered this one, but what's the average length video that people are watching? Right?
For live streams?
Period. On shareable content. Not live stream. So shareable content. What's the average length video? It's like 60 seconds, guys.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
so I'm trying to. I'm just thinking of from the perspective of what. I don't know what I would. It would be interesting to really flesh out that conversation with the person that asked it. What exactly is the content that you think would be beneficial or would warrant an investment to purchase some ads? So
Right. So yeah, and I guess just a comment on the ads on the platform. The ad will immediately begin to reach people, but that company's algorithm, that ad doesn't kick in to 3 to 7 days later.
Yep.
Yep.
So if you're having something that's on Saturday and you're putting an ad up on Friday,
Not
you know,
gonna work.
they told
Yeah.
you you're going to reach 10,000 people, but Saturday you're going to reach 700. And the week later so
Yep.
you have to keep that in mind as well as how that algorithm works inside of that company.
Yeah. So stacking your content
Oh,
weeks
yeah,
in
and-
advance is going to be so important.
Right, and you have to factor in the days to have the ad approved,
Yep.
Right.
because there's an approval process that takes place for that particular ad that you're trying to use.
It's very true.
And also too, if you're dishing out money for ads, you have to also ask yourself, like, what is the return on your investment? Like, why are you actually
Yeah.
putting money into this? Is it just to get more followers, more views? Are you trying to monetize off YouTube? So you got to ask yourself, what's my return on my investment?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those are very good points. So don't just throw money, blindly. You have to have a strategy, you have to have a purpose, and ensure that whatever content you are putting an ad on is content that would appeal to your target audience.
Yeah.
So a question that kind of goes back to, what we were discussing just before this. What are the most popular research tools one can use to know what people are searching for online? So Robert, you had mentioned Facebook Pixel, and then in the comments, somebody said Google Analytics. So what are just some ways that we can, know what is maybe not only what people are searching for in our area, but also like what is resonating with people when they come to our website?
There are two that I use. One, you can go to keywordtool.io. There's a paid version of that, but you can also get fairly good data from just the free version. So keywordtool.io, and what you're going to do is put in a keyword and it will give you information in regards to what people are typing or what they're searching for surrounding that keyword. The other platform that you can use is answerthepublic.com. Answerthepublic.com. I personally found it very useful. You don't have to pay for it, and it works the same way. The reason why I prefer Answer the Public is because it categorizes it so well. It gives you the data. You just get a lot of information from it. So those are two that I would recommend immediately, especially if you're just starting out. SEO is not my forte. We have persons in our ministry who are dedicated specifically for that. But if you're just starting out, you're just learning about digital evangelism, just learning SEO, search engine optimization, keywordtool.io, and then answerthepublic.com.
Those are both great.
Okay, fantastic.
Sorry, I wanted to take that a little step further too. Like even when you're bringing your SEO to say onto social media, using your hashtags as well too in your posts, if you're trying to really spread a word or get more people to engage with it. So utilize your hashtags. There's different resources online where you can see the different hashtags that you can use specifically depending on what your subject is about.
Yeah. The hashtags still work.
Yes, absolutely.
They still work. They're still good. I mean, and people still follow them.
Yeah.
They've got their own searches, especially on Twitter, but also I'm finding a lot more on LinkedIn as well. People are still following hashtags. So
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a big question that came up actually this morning, and we promised people who are watching that we were going to touch on this. So it's about Zoom. So there are two different parts to this because I just put all the Zoom questions together. So if someone hacks your Zoom meeting, would you recommend kicking them out or shutting the program down to be resumed later? So what would work best? I think they were wanting to know if they can just kick them out and resume and continue so they don't have to actually shut down the program. And then the other is, and this is a second different question actually. So what if you remove someone from Zoom accidentally? Can you bring them back in, and how would you do so?
So I guess
go ahead, BT.
I guess for me, the question is, if someone hacks your Zoom meeting. So for me is making sure as much as possible that they didn't hack my Zoom meeting.
yeah.
And putting in all of the precautions and safety measures that I could. Just a couple of them. I never put on social media the Zoom meeting number and password.
Yep.
In my settings and preferences for Zoom, I have it so that everyone goes into the waiting room.
Yep.
I have screen sharing turned off so that only the presenter or the host can determine who screen shares. I think if a person did those three, then that could pretty much help with somebody jumping into your Zoom or Zoom bombing you, just by doing those three, because you put those controls in place that will help.
So can I would just want to jump in there, BT. I know, Robert, you wanted to say something, but based on what BT has shared in terms of the definition of the pre-work that you've done to ensure that they cannot get in, then if you're still asking the same question, if someone hacks my Zoom, see, as an IT professional with some security background, when somebody says hacks, it means that they have brute force made their way into your Zoom meeting without the Zoom meeting ID or password. My recommendation to you is to shut it down immediately and resume the meeting later. Don't just kick them out. Shut it down, report it to Zoom, let them know that this has happened. But if you have put your Zoom meeting ID and password out on social media and everywhere for everyone to know, then I don't know that we can actually use the term hacked.
Right.
You actually invited them. So I just want to make that distinction. If you have done those things that the BT has said, and they still make their way in, by all means, please shut it down. But if you have not, you have some options in terms of whether or not you want to let this person stay, or if you want to kick them out. And if you have kicked someone out, I am not 100% certain how Zoom does it. If you can let that person back in by sending them a specific link, I don't have that detail right off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, you would have to set that up in the back end, because there is a setting that if you kick people from the room or you remove them from the room, whether or not they can rejoin that same meeting. And the other security mechanism that I might recommend as well is in some cases, you might even want to have people register for that meeting. A lot of times, especially in church settings, we just say, okay, listen, here's the Zoom link. Maybe we'll pop a passcode on there. Here you go. Sometimes we don't know where that link goes, who people share it with, etc. So if you have a registration option where you can then see the list of people that are coming in, are those church members that you recognize, et cetera, that's another step that you can take. And maybe you don't want to take it every single time, depending on the size of your church, but even if you implement that option periodically, so that people can't just get used to the fact that they're just able to enter your meeting whenever because you operate the same exact way.
Right.
What I would also add to that, this is just my personal recommendation. If you are, for most of these Zoom meetings, I notice that there are few people who are participating in the program, unless say you have 100 people in your Zoom meeting. 90 of them or 92 of them have their cameras off and their microphones off, and they're not interacting anyway. In cases like that, what I would actually do is have those 3 people, maybe, or 5, who are actually participating in the program, in the Zoom meeting, and then have persons watch via Facebook or YouTube, or if you have that setting, or if you have that plan that allows you to stream, rather than having everyone onto the Zoom meeting, because it does save you some headache with one time someone has their microphone on or off, and then all of that. So that can actually save you some of that headache in regards to being Zoom bombed. There have been situations, Adventist churches, where persons hack, Zoom bomb, and then they start sharing very graphic material.
Yes.
In that case, sometimes you're so flustered, and to go and try to find the person to kick them off, in a situation like that, you might just want to just stop the meeting, because chances are they might be able to get back in because you did not have a chance to do that back end work where the meeting is protected. So in a situation like that, I would recommend ending the meeting and then resuming it later with protection.
Yeah.
So so Robert mentioned one of the things that we have to be careful of, but it's kind of difficult, and that is you don't know who has shared that. You sent the meeting number and the password to a set group of people. You don't know who they shared it with, and they're going to share it with somebody. You know, hey, we're having this Bible discussion. Come to the discussion. So in those instances, as the producer of it, when they're in the back room, if there's a name that you don't recognize or a number or something you don't recognize, do a private chat with that person and ask them some specific questions that only people who would be in that group would know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then and then once you've been satisfied with that, then you can allow them in. But I would zoom in on them and just drill down until I was absolutely sure that this was someone safe to allow into the meeting if I didn't recognize that name or whatever handle that they put up on the screen. Because people in that group are going to share it with other people, and many of them innocently, hey, come join this group, but you don't know how far it goes. I, as the worship and media pastor at our church, there was someone who put on one of the church's social media pages, they put the password and the meeting number on there, and I called them, and I called the person that handles our social media. I said, take that post down, and then I called the person. I said, now you need to create a new meeting.
One. Yep.
I said, create a new meeting, because 90 billion people now have your information. Create a new meeting. And so they said, well, it's okay. I said, so yes, you're having a party at your house, and you're telling people I have a party at my house, but you don't give people the front door key and the alarm code to your house because you're having a party.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. You invite them, but you don't give them everything they need to get in. So that's some of the things that I would kind of suggest to this person that they could do as well.
Yeah, in the comments, Wise Check is saying it may be good to tell the host in advance if you have invited a visitor and what ID name that person is going to come in with. I always like to tell people at least at least for a minute or two, you're going to need to turn on your camera, even for people I know. Sorry.
Yes.
You just
Right.
gotta,
I need to see who you are.
I need to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to give a funny anecdote. I didn't realize at the time that maybe it was a security measure, but I entered a church's live stream or Zoom, and I had put my name as a pseudonym, and they called me out. They're like, "Oh, who is this?" And so I put my real name in the chat because I had called myself Child of God, and I was thinking, okay, I can be anonymous. And the pastor called me out. Who's Child of God? So, so I guess you can do that as well. Call people out if you have to.
Yeah, the safety. Just to be clear, I mean, I'm glad that we're touching on this because it is a really, it's a tangible thing. It's an unfortunate reality of the current times that we live in. But the impact of some of the material that people can bomb your Zoom meeting and share has on folks can be far worse than having to call somebody out and say, "Hey, child of God, we need to see who you are real quick." You know what I mean? So we just, as we look at it, even for those of us who are like, "Man, that's a bit much. I don't know if I want to do all of that." Just, you probably haven't been Zoom bombed and experienced, in one case they had some pretty graphic things about Donald Trump that they were showing in one Zoom meeting. Other cases, it was pornographic material. In other cases, the person didn't actually put anything on screen, but they were just yelling obscenities at the top of their lungs. These can be very disturbing. I mean, very disturbing to people who are very much new to these kinds of meeting platforms. So we just want to take those extra steps and ensure that we safeguard our people. Because, I mean, honestly, that impact could be far worse than just having to go through the, sometimes uncomfortable or what we may feel is inconvenient steps of doing the security pieces that we need to do.
Yeah.
Right. And speaking on security, this question came up earlier. Are there any safety risks we should be aware of when doing outreach online? So we've talked about Zoom bombing or hacking. What are some other things that we just need to be mindful of as we are going online, basically?
I think it was Felecia that mentioned, you definitely don't want to meet people that you don't know privately. We'll just meet you at Walmart. You meet them online and you're developing a relationship with you. Maybe they're following you on YouTube or whatever. And yes, you feel like there's a connection or something real there, but you do want to have those safeguards in place. You just, you want to have those safeguards in place. You don't just go and meet someone that you honestly, you don't know them. So you want to take that step. Somebody else had mentioned that you definitely want to put your address out there. You don't share personally identifiable information. I'm saying that specifically because, a lot of people, they want to take part in some of these different things that happen on social media, like the aging things that was kind of a craze there for a little while. It's like, oh, this is what I look like today. I'm going to age myself to see what I look like in 70 years. All of those apps they're just trying to grab personally identifiable information.
Yeah.
Somebody asks you your mother's maiden name for a joke or for a new craze that's happening on social media. That's not something you should ever share, because it's like the number one security question that people ask is your mother's maiden name. And it may seem like it's a game and I'm playing the game, but somebody's getting information that they could use to assume your identity. And so there's so many different things that we just want to be aware of. What I always tell folks is, when it comes down to online security, you want to be present in the moment. When you find yourself coasting along on autopilot, you're generally going to be heading for trouble. You've got to read. Like when I was at Oakwood, I would tell folks Oakwood is spelled with 2 O's and not 3. And they were looking at me like, what do you mean? Well, that I have seen people respond to Oakwood with 3 O's. And so it's just those kinds of things that you want to be fully engaged and fully aware when you're actually online, when you're sharing stuff, when you're doing digital evangelism, when you're working. Everybody's doing online things en masse these days, right? Because of what we are in this pandemic. Just want to be fully engaged. You want to be present in the moment, looking exactly at what you're doing. Don't just click. That's one of the campaigns for one of the programs that we use. It says, think before you click. So those are just a couple of them that I know come to mind pretty quickly for me in terms of being safe online.
Yeah.
In regards to also adding to that, because it's really good information, protecting children. I know in the age of social media, we have our cute little ones and we want to post. And I'm not saying, don't post pictures of your children or don't have them on live streams, but you do want to be extra cautious of that because it's not everyone who is looking at the picture of your children and thinking they're so beautiful and put a heart emoji. There are persons who are downloading photos of children and then starting GoFundMe accounts because this child died. For instance, there was a story of an Adventist couple, their child was sick, and information was shared online about the child's hospital and the child's room number. And persons were showing up at the child's room because of this information that was shared online. So people will exploit that. So if you are streaming children, there actually Facebook sometimes, there was one video that there have been instances where they pull those kinds of videos. So you want to be very cautious in regards to photos that you're sharing with your children or if they're being streamed and so forth. So that's what I would want to say in regards to just being careful with children.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I would say in the question kind of said outreach. So we were doing some things. Our outreach pastor was doing some things at church that they were having for the community, and the person reached out and said, "Hey, can you drop those off for me? Or where do I get them? Here's where I can pick them up." And I said, "So you give them the church's address. That's where the pickup is, and that's where the drop off is. It's in the church parking lot in front of the church office where the secretary can see out the window. That's the pickup and the drop off location. Yeah, just being very, very sensible and wise, even though we're in a time where we're trying to help a lot.
Yes.
Right, exactly. So those are some really good points. There are some questions. So somebody says, Yvonne Edwards says, restarting Zoom let me start from the beginning. Okay, on Zoom, what would prevent screen share by the co-host? The audience can see no slide up, even though the message shows the screen sharing attempt.
But I think, and I don't know if this was just something that they typed, Yvonne. Maybe you can help us clarify. But when you say co-host, it says to me that this is one of the planners for the meeting. A co-host should be able to share their screen. So if you're saying a member, somebody attendee of the meeting, there is functionality in Zoom that you as the host or co-host would have to enable that person to be able to share their screen. And so that's why I wanted to get a little bit of clarity there, because the co-host should be able to share their screen.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a technical issue that she's referring to rather than a logistical one.
Because what I was thinking was, even though when you click the screen share, if you have more than one screen, you have to select which screen you're trying to use. It will show that the screen sharing is been attempted or that it's active. But if that person has not selected the screen itself, then it will be blank.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one that came in a little while ago from Grace Guam here. I don't know if that means she's joining us from Guam. Anyway, welcome, Grace. So it says, what are ways to tweak each approach? So that's e-newsletter, Facebook, Instagram, when conveying the same message, for example, join a small group, to the slightly different audiences using those platforms, and how to bring them all back to your website. So actually, just before anyone answers here, there's another question, which is, each platform kind of targets a different audience. So how can you tweak your messaging for those different audiences, but you're conveying the one message?
Well, you've got to be aware, first of all, of that audience. You've got to do a deep dive into who that audience is, what drives them, what are the things that they really want, what are the things that they're involved in, what's relevant to them, what struggles that particular audience is having, the more that you know about that audience. I mean, if you know that that audience is big fans of Game of Thrones, right? Then your messaging is targeted towards that. If that audience watches This Is Us or Greenleaf, then you make references to that. So it's really more so about doing a deep dive into your audience than just kind of randomly coming up with approaches that you think might work.
And then it's understanding also the various platforms. For example, newsletter, you can go a bit more lengthy in that. Your young people probably might not read a newsletter. It's that older demographic sometimes. So you can have a few paragraphs in that. We know with Instagram, they tend to, it tends to favor more photographs or these short video clips. So you definitely don't want to just copy and paste the information from your newsletter onto Instagram. And then Facebook allows you maybe for a little longer post and a graphic and so forth. So just having that understanding of each of the posts, then you can take that same message and just package it differently.
You know, I don't think there's a one, quick rundown answer to this question. I think what you're hearing from both people who have responded so far is it depends, right? Some version of it depends. And yes, you should tweak it for the different platforms. What I wanted to add was think about ways that you can kind of, use the snowball effect. You have a lot of people in your church. You have a specific piece of content that you feel you've put some time and effort into, and it meets your demographic. It meets your target audience. So then begin looking at ways to strategically share that content. Okay, so you break up your team. Let's say you have 6 people, break them up and say, you share it here and tag the church. You share it here, tag the church. You share it here on the same platform and tag the church, but at a different time. Or go back and then comment on it or tag someone who you feel would be, who this thing is relevant to. Looking at ways to engage on the different platforms, figuring out how to kick something back up to the top, right? So you post something on Facebook, it's been there for a day or two, it's really not in anybody's feed anymore. How do you kick that back up to the top? You like it, you comment on it, and you get some more engagement happening on that content, and guess what? It goes back up to the top. In fact, year-old content. A couple years back, they had Gain in Dubai, and a friend of mine just commented on it last week, and guess what? It's back at the top again. And so multiple people commenting on a 2-3-year-old picture. But what I'm saying is you can do that around your content because it's a group of you, right? Don't look at your campaigns as a one-man show, as if you're just out there on social media by yourself. You are a body. You are an entity. You are a group. So leverage the group, leverage the numbers in your group to be able to push your content out there in ways that not only hits them once, but hits them multiple times.
I just want to add to that as well too. Find ways that you can repurpose the work that you've already done. How can you repurpose it and repost it in a different way? So for example, on Facebook, the target audience for Facebook is 65% of them are adults between 50 to 64. And Instagram has a different target audience. Maybe 64% of them are between 18 and 29.
Yes.
So maybe the same post, maybe you're posting a quote or something. The image that you might have in the background of the quote, maybe you'll have a different image in the background for the one that you post on Instagram versus the one that you post on Facebook, for example. So you're using the same content, but you're just repurposing it in a way by changing or tweaking something, slightly, like your photo in the background, and posting it to the different platforms.
Nice.
Yes.
I really love that
I like
because,
that. That's nice.
for me, I'm a writer. So like when I think of content, I think in words rather than pictures most of the time. But it's important to consider, images that will attract different audiences.
Yes.
So
Very
thank
big.
you for bringing that point up. Now, here's a question from Patricia Hackmat. How can I assure that the content of my computer doesn't show up on the platform used by the host? So I think she's speaking about Zoom and, just security for the participant.
In order to answer the question, I think you have to make a couple of assumptions. I'm not sure what is meant. Is she
Okay.
sharing her screen? And then when you're sharing the screen, there's a couple of options there. You can share just the application, or you can share the screen. Which one did you select? So there's a couple other details that I'm not certain what you mean there, and especially when you say security for the participant. That kind of turns the corner, takes us down a different path. So I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody else is understanding it. I'm getting turned around.
Yeah, I think as I'm reading it, I think what they're asking is, so I attend. I'm on the platform that you have. So let's say we'll use How It All Works. I come to How It All Works, and I'm on there. What guarantee do I have that my computer content is not showing up on YouTube's platform? I think that's what they're asking. Is there any way that their content from their computer can be submitted to that platform without their knowledge?
No, they would have to give permission for
Yeah,
sharing.
I guess.
Period.
Yeah, that's a really interesting
I think that's
scenario.
what they're. I think the question is they want to make sure they can't be pickpocketed.
Yeah.
But okay, so
Yeah.
yes, their specific content is not going to be picked up by the show. But I think if you think of it in terms of analytics, if you think of it in terms of the pixel that Robert mentioned earlier, there is some breadcrumbs that you leave behind. It doesn't matter where you go.
Right.
Cookies that you leave behind. Cookies is a real term. But just there's this little data trail that you leave behind no matter where you go. Every site you go to right now has that little thing that comes up on it saying, hey, we got the tracking thing going here. And they may say it in different ways, in different terms, but that's what they mean, is that they are, quote unquote, trying to figure out where you came from before you got here, and they will be looking to see where do you go next. And that's pretty much all they can do. That second hop they can't get. But there as you browse the web, unless you're using one of these secure browsers like DuckDuckGo or something like that really has zero cookies built in, you will be tracked to a certain extent. And so that part is a very real reality. It's just kind of part of doing business. But in terms of the actual, like, if you come to see this, you're on YouTube right now watching this summit for Ontario Conference. Will Ontario Conference be able to see anything from your computer directly? The answer to that is no. Would they be able to gather some information in terms of analytics and demographic data about who watched the video, who stayed for how much time, and all that stuff? Oh, absolutely. They can get that data pretty easily. Will it be specific to you? I don't think so. They won't be able to. The person themselves, the end user, would not be able to drill down to the person's name. Like we would not be able to know that somebody just randomly came in and watched the video for a minute or two and left. We would know that person's presence was there, but wouldn't be able to find out much more information of that person other than that.
Okay, so someone actually put a comment that maybe is along the same lines. If I'm attending a Zoom meeting, I'm not the host. Am I and my computer secure? So I don't know.
We can go down the rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
This could be the rest of the entire conversation.
We could literally ask, if you're on the internet, are you secure?
Yeah.
The truth is that if there is somebody that is targeting you that is ridiculously talented and nefarious at the same time, then they're going to find a way. In most circumstances, in general circumstances, the companies that have applications for meetings like this are doing everything they can to make sure that each attendee is secure so that people can purchase their product and feel at home or feel safe when they're utilizing their product. So I would say for the most part, there's nothing that's 100% certain in this world, but I would say for the most part, Zoom, especially since COVID has taken place, has really stepped up their game with trying to make sure that their platform is as secure as possible. So, you're asking if Christelle is leading a Zoom meeting, will she be able to see your information? The answer is not unless Christelle really wants to get all of your information and she's a super hacker.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that it's usually in the reverse. The platform themselves always do what's necessary because I mean it's in their best interest for their
Yes.
platforms to be secure. But the attendees, this is you just can't it cannot be overstated. It's usually the other people that have come to the call that may have some bug running around on their system, and that's where some of the vulnerabilities and some of the attack vectors come into play. What are the other people doing? What have they been doing before what were they on? What sites what were they engaged in right before they connected to your Zoom meeting? We don't know. And it's very difficult to say. So the generally speaking, these platforms that are out there, they're going to want to make sure you're secure. It's in their best interest. But we as consumers, a lot of times don't take that onus on ourselves to say, what am I doing on this site? Why do I even have it open? You got 50 tabs open in your Google, your browser. Why do you have all 50 of them open? You may have a reason for all 50, but these are the things that we need to be mindful of and be thinking about. And as I mentioned before, be present in the moment as you're using your computer, as you're online, as you're interacting. Be present. Don't just go on autopilot. Just I'm just clicking here, clicking there. That looks about right, because that's exactly what the hackers are expecting you to do, and that's how they get across, how they get information. Something pops up and it looks like the window that you're used to logging into, so you put your login and password in, and then you get a notification that somebody logged in Sweden. Those are the things that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see Patricia kind of clarified a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of what she was asking before. I think, Patricia, what it looks like is happening in your case was you were put on as a co-host in a
okay.
Zoom
I'm seeing
meeting,
it.
and you may have been asked to share your screen in some ways, and you did that, assuming that the meeting was enclosed, and then you didn't know that it was being streamed to Facebook.
Mercy.
So here's the thing. It's some of this comes down to our own personal online etiquette, or intentionality or preparation before meetings. And I know that all of us don't have the ability to have multiple screens, but if you're going to be in any meeting and you have to share your screen in any way, you want to make sure that there's nothing on your desktop that gives away personal information, has all of your files laid out and all of that, so that if there's any possibility that you're going live and your desktop is shown, your privacy isn't compromised. Okay, so in this case, if you saw that information and you were uncomfortable with it, what I would do is reach out to the host or whoever set that meeting up and say, hey, listen, my information is here. It's private. I'm not comfortable with that. Can you either edit that piece out of the video,
Or take it
or
down.
can you take that down and these are some of my rights and I'm not comfortable with that.
I think Felecia and Abbigale both mentioned that you have to, even when you have to ask permission. If somebody gives you the email address, you have to ask them permission what you can do with that. I think it needs to also be stated that, I mean, if you're going to jump into Zoom, the host has got to be able to tell you, hey, we're going to be live on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
You can't just go live and not tell the people who
And not tell
are
somebody.
there.
Right.
So you want to make people know. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really prefer StreamYard as a broadcast platform, or Ecamm or whatever, because there's an intentionality around, okay, if I'm in StreamYard, the whole purpose is for us to go live. Whereas when I'm in Zoom, I'm expecting I'm in a meeting. And so, yes, Zoom can go live, but if you haven't told your guests that we are going live, I think that's unfair.
Right.
So that's something that we as leaders can help to implement, to let folks know, hey, you're joining our Zoom meeting. We want to let you know that we will be streaming to Facebook as well.
Okay. So switching gears a bit, someone had asked me earlier which resources are available to minister to children online, and how can we improve children's church online?
Wow, that's big.
Yeah, that is one. I guess one of the things our children's ministry has been very proficient in producing content during this time for children, and they create a whole YouTube channel. So that's one of the places, and I'm sure there are other churches that have created channels where they have placed all of the content that they've created for kids over this time.
I mean, there's a there's a component of creativity that will be required here. I mean, I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer to that question, or that you're just going to go to a site and say, oh, here's a group, here's somebody has curated all these great ideas that I can do with children online, and maybe there is, but I've found that it's just kind of like these types of sessions where people are sharing, this is what we're doing, and you say, hey, cool, that's what others are doing. So kind of reaching out to other churches and other children ministries programs and figuring out what's going on. My Allegheny East Conference, where my sister is a member at a church in Baltimore, they had a virtual camporee, and so her kids camped out in the backyard, and I was on video with her when her husband was on FaceTime with the camporee director inspecting their uniforms. I'm just saying there's ways for people to get creative in these time frames. I know for our children's ministry program, we use Zoom. We don't stream it. It's just for the kids at our church. And the children's leader sends us a message earlier in the week, maybe by Thursday, and says, I need you to hide these things around the house. And then when the kids get on Zoom, there's a scavenger hunt, and they've got to find the item, and so they run off and come back. It is a blast. I find that they're having a phenomenal time. But I don't know that there's a recipe here. I really feel like people are just praying to God and getting some creativity and ideas, and just allowing themselves some freedom to think outside of the box a little bit, given the confines of what we're doing. So yes, you're on Zoom, but there's still ways that you can have the kids active. I mean, they literally sweating, running around the house trying to find some of these items, but they're enjoying themselves, and the message of the story that the teacher was trying to convey really hits home. So
yeah, I'll add to that, Kirk. If you're using Zoom, one of the things that kids absolutely love as well is when you send them to breakout groups with to do crafts or different things like that, because there's something about, and we're Christians, but I'll use the word, there's something about the magic of going from the large group, like you're being teleported to this smaller group. And that's fascinating for them, no matter how many times they do it. And so you're able to do different things and do different activities instead of trying to manage a larger group of 20, 30, 40 kids doing one thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw, this was the Adventist Academy in the Bahamas Academy, did was that they have this read online for their students, where all of the kids would sign in at a particular time, and it was 30 minutes, and they had different people who were reading these stories or telling these stories, and they had kids bring their blanket or something. So definitely it is creativity. I don't know as yet as a list of resources to help children in regards to online ministry, but definitely I want to confirm the idea that you have to be creative with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Making it fun.
Okay, so so I have a few technical questions here, and so one is, what are the best paid and free video editing tools online?
Wow.
So if you don't,
So when they say online, are they talking about online editing right online, or are they talking about that they can purchase online? Because I mean, if you're on Mac, we can go from iMovie to Camtasia. We can do all of that. If you're talking about online,
Cloud-based.
you can say that again.
Cloud-based.
Cloud-based. I mean, you can edit videos in Canva now.
You can.
So I mean, there's just so many different resources.
Actually, YouTube has an editor too. You're right.
Yeah.
There's DaVinci.
DaVinci Resolve.
Yep.
DaVinci Resolve.
It's free 99. So
it's free 99. Yes, it is.
But it only you do, that's a download, so that you'd have to pull it down on your machine.
Yeah.
But there are some really good utilities out there. Both cloud-based, and by cloud-based I mean they're fully online. You upload your content to the editor, to the editing software, edit it there, and then render it there. I use WeVideo for stuff that I'm using at church. but there's like at least 5 or 6 that are in that same market with WeVideo. But they're, if you're doing a major project where you want to keep all the content on your own machine, then Final Cut and Premiere, those are the big boys. But I know that's not what you're asking about, especially if you're talking about price.
Yeah.
So their Resolve is in my opinion, pound for pound, just as robust as those other two.
Yes.
And it is free, so it is something to really consider. So that would be one that I would say. But of course, you do need the difference between online and on your own machine is you're going to have the processing power on your machine. So if my go-to, what I grab and go is a Pixelbook, which is basically a Chromebook. I have to have something that's online, but I do have my Mac at home and I have another Mac, at church. So I have access to a Mac, but I don't have access to a Mac on the go, which is why I do use a platform like WeVideo. Do I recommend it? Yeah, it's good.
It works for you.
It works, and I think that's the point. You got to use what works.
Figure out what works for you. Yeah.
And also too, if you're editing videos, like maybe say for social media, there's also free resources that you can use or different apps that you can use. There's one called InShot and there's another one called Outshot. Those are free resources and they're very good for editing videos online for social media.
Yeah, I personally use iMovie on my phone. Sometimes I just want to edit videos really quick. And it works. And then, of course, for major projects, Premiere. So if you're starting, you don't have a budget for editing software and you have an iPhone, definitely start with iMovie.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to put my voice down another register now because Kirk's getting props in the comments about his baritone.
Hey, man. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's another technical question. So we have people on here. Someone asked a while ago about hashtags. So for people who are needing a step-by-step in terms of, how do I design, a post or flyer? How do I get started live streaming? What do I do? I'm pumped up because I've attended the Virtual Communications Summit. I'm excited, but I just don't know where to start. So are there any resources that you can recommend to assist them?
That is a big question.
Yeah.
Well, since graphic design was first, I thought that Abbigale might go first.
Start with Abbigale, right? Yeah. Start with Abbigale.
Yes, I do have several resources that I could send you if you do need help in those areas, such as like hashtags and learning how to use them. Any help with graphic design and tips and different resources that you can use. So if you send me an email at info@bogcdesigns.com, just tell me what it is that you're looking for, and I can help you out with whatever resources that I have accessible to me. Also on my blog as well, I do share a different type of resources for churches can use or entrepreneurs can use as well too. So just contact me and tell me what you need and see if I can find it for you.
For us at the Center for Online Evangelism, we do have, in regards to digital evangelism, of course, there are resources that you can download if you want to know how to start live streaming, if you want to create a YouTube channel, a podcast, a blog, an online small group. We just created online sessions that you can go to, and each of those sessions or each of those courses have 4 sessions. And within each of those sessions, we provide you with resources and action tasks that will help you to actually build the platform. And then we have webinars and videos and so forth that you can watch. And so you can visit centerforonlineevangelism.org. And then I also want to put in a plug for sdadata.org that also has a ton of resources, articles, things that you can download, manuals, interviews. So those 2 websites for sure you should visit.
They opened the door for you, Kirk.
No, a lot of people want to know. Okay, so how do I quickly, set up a setup so that I can go live, so I can live stream my services. I mean, the basics are. I mean, you need a laptop, maybe. You need a computer that has an internet connection, good internet connection, preferably wired, not wireless. Right. You need a webcam. It doesn't have to be 1080p. It doesn't have to be HD or 4K. You don't have to use a DSLR. You know, as you can see, I'm very jealous of both Christelle and Abigail's setup right now. But it doesn't have to be any of those things. To be able to go live, it could be as basic as a phone, or you can have a full studio. And so, and somewhere in between are components that you already have, and you want to try as best as possible to use those things. Platforms like StreamYard are really take the guesswork out. You don't need an encoder. You don't need pretty much anything. As long as you have an account and your login and password for your destinations, and by destinations, I'm talking about Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and such like that, then you can go live fairly easily, fairly quickly. I personally have a tutorial for StreamYard on my YouTube channel. I mean, it's almost 35 minutes, but I go through every button in the thing. So if you want to check that out, it's at howitallworks.com. It's one of the videos that are there, or youtube.com/Kirk Nugent, whichever one you want to go to. That will be able to walk you through there. And if you just do some Googling, you'll find others that are out there as well. I think one of the things that all of us are pretty much saying in a nutshell is the question is just the first step. You know, there's got to be some desire, some real true desire behind that question for you to actually be successful. So, you know, Abbigale has told you, contact me for this. Felecia has said, you know, come to our place. We have these modules and we can train you on all this stuff. And then there's SDA data. So then the question really becomes, who's actually going to go do that? Right? And because doing that piece is what's going to actually enable you to really be able to go live, be able to do the graphic design, be able to do the digital ministry online, to be able to, you know, set up your live stream properly. Those are getting to that stage is going to require, you know, actually doing the learning steps. That's what's in between you and getting there. So.
Okay, so here's a good question from Rosalind Armstrong. Are there key analytic metrics to focus on in YouTube and Facebook that would indicate your channel and page are performing well?
I would say if you are, especially with regard to YouTube, there are a lot of different elements that really help you to measure yourself against others, against other trending or other videos that are really moving in the right direction. Tagging is important, and a lot of times we don't use that enough. Hashtagging is helpful, and there is a software that I use that really helps with that. It's called vidIQ, VIDIQ, and you can download that as an extension if you're using your Chrome browser. That then allows you to see a lot of data, a lot of analytics about how your videos are performing, how your channel is performing versus other channels in that same industry, same field, same area of expertise. So that's one that I'll share.
Okay, perfect.
I've used Hootsuite. So the same person asked another question and says, you know, are there some helpful scheduling tools for posting on social media? So this Hootsuite actually does both. It gives you the analytics on your posts, how you've been doing week to week, but it also is a scheduling tool. Like that's their actual thing. There are many out there though. I'm not recommending Hootsuite because I don't even believe that there is a free version. But I'm just saying I said this in the chat, I think yesterday, anything that allows you to schedule. I mean, even Facebook has scheduling built in, you know, for your pages. So if you can schedule, man, listen, even for email, I will stack up some emails and have them scheduled to go out just in my Gmail, you know. So or even an Outlook. What I'm saying is anything that allows you to schedule, you utilize it, man, because it just takes that piece out where you're having to physically go and do stuff at the time you actually want it done. So yeah, but Hootsuite is one that I have used in the past for scheduling content for myself, for my church, and for clients, and it does give me a weekly email that gives me some analytics, some data in terms of what is the click rate, how many people have done, you know, engaged with the content that we're sharing, and how well your week has gone. So. Gives you a little bit of information there, but I just want to add this last piece in terms of, you know, key performance indicators. So some of this stuff is generic. It's what these platforms think you want to know. I think you're going to have to, especially when it comes on to ministry, determine what those success indicators really look like. Yeah. So, you know, are people actually coming? Are you seeing the audience around your page or channel grow? So some of those things are going to have to help to determine what does success look like. And I would actually encourage that you determine what success looks like earlier on in the process, rather than waiting to just kind of put some stuff out there and see what happens.
Yeah, and Hootsuite does have a free version. It's limited in that I think you can only have up to like 3 social profiles, and you're limited in the amount of messages that you can schedule per month. I think it's like 25 or 30.
Okay. All right.
There's also a system that I use. It's called Acrity, and I use that to schedule my posts for social media.
That's good.
But I also just wanted to touch on how important it is to have those processes in place, because it's time consuming to create posts, to create blogs and all these things, and then time consuming again to sit there and schedule them all out. So if you can do that and have some kind of system in place where you can preload your emails or preload your blog articles, and it schedules it for you and sends it out for you, even for your social media, that will save you a lot of time.
Yeah. And you mentioned this earlier, Abbigale, and somebody just mentioned in the comments that Canva also does do some content planner options and scheduling as well, which is really cool. It's a new feature they just rolled out.
Wow, Canva is really winning.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, I just learned today that they do. They do a lot more than I expected. But I just want to address a question. We have to wrap up shortly, but Nyasha Smith Ruddock asked, is Zoom the best platform to go live on Facebook or Instagram? And I guess it's subjective, but
it depends.
Yeah, I saw there's a picture that's floating around social media right now with oh man, I can't remember the guy's name, but he managed or live switched the
Glenn Weiss.
Okay, Glenn Weiss managed and live switched the Democratic National Convention from his home, and he actually used Zoom for some of those video feeds from people's houses or people who spoke at the Democratic National Convention. He used Zoom to bring those feeds into his system, and then used his system to provide that video out to the different destinations he was streaming to. So in his case, he was using something way sophisticated and was using Zoom as one source for videos. And so, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is it depends. Is Zoom really the best one? I mean, I honestly don't know how to use Zoom to stream to Instagram. I'm just saying.
We can't.
Exactly. So in terms of answering that question, it really depends on what's your comfortability level, because within Zoom it's a couple of clicks to go live on Facebook. And so what I'm saying to most people is, wherever you're comfortable at, if that's the platform you want to use, if that's what you're comfortable with, it's what you're already paying for, then by all means, let's not complicate the thing. Let's use what we've got in our hands. But I do believe that Zoom actually has a different intention in mind. Their target market is meetings, online meetings. Their target market isn't necessarily broadcast. And so that's the major difference between something like StreamYard and Zoom, is that StreamYard's target is broadcast. They want to be able to give people a broadcast feel, even though it really kind of still has that meeting vibe.
Yeah. Just to be clear, Instagram has not opened up the API for other platforms to stream live to Instagram. So the only way to stream or to go live on Instagram is to be on Instagram.
Right.
There's some hacks there, and let me just be clear, because I know somebody's out there thinking, oh, but I've done it this way. I'm just saying, some of those other things you will get dinged. I know of a church that used a product called Yellow Duck that to be able to stream on their Instagram page even before they got to 1,000 followers, and they got dinged hard for that. Instagram doesn't even allow you to do a live video until you have a certain amount of followers. So there's we just want to follow the rules, and be good digital citizens, if you will.
Okay, now I know that we are getting to the end. I'm going to take the liberty of just taking another 15 minutes, if you guys don't mind, because there are a few questions that I really think you guys can provide great answers to. So this is whoever can answer, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see churches tending to make when live streaming? So, so just some general don't do this. Like, for example, using low quality cameras, not stabilizing the cameras. What have you seen out there that could help our churches to improve their live streaming offerings?
Wow.
I heard somebody say, "Wow."
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my biggest pet peeve is camera angle.
Me too.
And so I call it the up the nose shot.
Please stop, folks.
Where you can see the brain. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that churches tend to make when live streaming is yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
What
Look
I
at the.
would say in regards to this is not necessarily the technical part. I leave that for the technical gurus here. But trying to replicate what we were doing within the four walls of our church before
boy.
COVID online.
Yes.
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 And so yes, that it is okay to be creative and to recognize if someone is sitting in church at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, that I don't want to say they don't have a choice, but that's what they're there for. However, today, especially with the whole digital church hopping going on and the 50 billion other distractions that they have online, so even having a sermon for an hour and 10 minutes, it's okay to maybe shorten that, and that we don't have to have all of the other list of things on our program and try to follow that on Zoom. So that's what I would say. We don't have to follow that same method that we used to do before COVID.
Excellent. That's so good.
So you guys mentioned technical things, and
Yes.
I love what Felecia said just now. I'm a communications guy, so I am particular about engagement and two-way
Yes.
dialogue.
Yes.
So when you're having a digital or you're having a virtual session and it's only one way and there's not any real way for the participants or the audience to engage, if there's nobody monitoring the chat, if there's nobody literally asking them questions and it's just a stream, people are typing stuff in, but nobody's answering them. Nobody's responding to them. That's a faux pas. That's a no can do. That's a fail. So you want to really connect with people.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And if I can, Robert brings up a good point is if you on your streams, please have a moderator. Have someone there who is answering and responding and posing questions and encouraging and creating dialogue, but more so than that, have someone there who can delete inappropriate comments that people who just came to mess with your event that are making inside of your comments, because they show up. I had someone the other Sabbath who came and they just went in on just inappropriate comments that had nothing to do with church, that had nothing to do with Christ. They weren't a seeker who just didn't know the language. They were who they were, and it was clear that why they came.
Yeah, man, these are some great points, and I mean, in terms of the technical, I would just say, try to be mindful of the time and try to keep it concise. In terms, what's holding the attention span of the people who are watching. So, try to be mindful of the pieces of the program that may not be holding their attention, if that makes sense. The announcement section, maybe don't even include it, right? But definitely try to test the waters, if you will. Give yourself some freedom to not be locked into the liturgy, the order of service that we have been doing all along. I could not agree with that more. You just give yourself some freedom to do some slightly different things, especially since we're out in the public marketplace where anyone can watch, right? So yes, you expect that your church members will show up to support their own church, but they could invite anybody, and any given Sabbath, somebody could show up. So we want to make sure that the jargon is across the board. Everybody can understand. We're not using terms that are only specific to us. We're not using acronyms that we know and we know that our people know, but they aren't necessarily widely known by everyone. We want to just make sure that it's publicly accessible. We've got to keep in mind who we're speaking to or who our target audience is. that's I know probably people are going to go walk away and say this is the target audience summit as opposed to
repetition deepens the impression.
There it is.
Yeah. Okay, now this is
Sorry.
a very sorry,
Crystal,
go
can
ahead.
I add one thing with that
Yeah.
too? I find
Please
that a
do.
lot of churches don't have a method of measuring their results from live streaming. So if you can have something in place where you're measuring how many visitors are coming to your live stream, or how many new members are signing up for whatever it may be, or your attendee rates, or different things like that, and also to driving people from your live stream back to your website as well too, or back to your blogs, or back to your social media pages as well too. And don't be afraid to ask questions of them, like, so you can improve your live streams, improve your service,
Yes.
right?
Excellent.
Ask them questions. Maybe have a survey somewhere on your website and send them to that, send them to that link so that you can get some feedback so you can improve on your service.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something we don't think often enough about, just surveying the audience to make sure that, the live stream is meeting their needs. So thank you for that. So I have this question as we are wrapping up now, and I'm going to ask all of you to give your take on it. Do you have any predictions for changes to come in terms of church communications and ministry in general? I guess from the lens that you're coming from, whether it's graphic design, live streaming, digital evangelism, etc. So predictions, and the other part is how can we prepare for what's ahead in your view?
What I see happening, what I actually hope to see happening, is church members taking initiative to start online ministries, to share their personal testimonies, to start a YouTube channel, to start a blog, to start a podcast, to start witnessing and meeting the needs of people, rather than seeing the work of evangelism as simply the pastor's job or the Bible worker's job. Because in regards to the gospel going out, it's more us, it's more the members doing that work that's going to help more people come to know Christ and so forth. So that's what I see happening. I see members taking the reins and deciding, I can do this. I have the resources available to me. Most importantly, I have the Holy Spirit helping me. I don't have to go to the church for a budget, for example. So just starting their ministry. That's what I see.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I guess one of the things that I see is that a lot of things will be streamlined. Felecia kind of hinted at it, and it will be, we'll hear more people saying, oh yeah, just send me the text or put it in the flock note, put it in the newsletter, put it in the email. We don't need to meet for that. We haven't met for 6 months and we got everything done, So I think that's one of the things in terms of communication will take place, is that there will be less of the meetings that we thought were so urgent and necessary to have, and you brought 50 people to the church and they met for 45 minutes, and my pet peeve is they did 3 things, and people are saying now let's do those 3 things in the email, and I can still spend that 45 minutes with my family.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, more and more, online is going to be the first place that people will have a connection or an interaction with you. So rather than the church streaming being the outgrowth of our plan for in-person services, I do see the in-person services becoming the outgrowth of what we've done in the virtual space.
Yes.
So the virtual space will begin to take the lead in that, and if we don't do that, if we're not intentional about that, then we are going to see a diminishing, minimizing, a decline in church growth, in church membership, and church attendance when we do get back to a place where there are some walls. And we will get back, and there's some people who are going to try to push us back there as the only place. But that's and I'm going to be bold and say that's the wrong move. We've got to now consider this greater world and figure out how we can leverage that, in order to lead to these different arms or avenues for growth.
I think one of the other things that will come out of this will be the length of the service.
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody's like, yay! No.
Yeah, I think that's going to it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I think one of the things that has happened is that this has showed that you can have impact, creativity, have meaning and connection in less than 3 hours that we thought we needed to have before.
Mercy. So what has been shared so far is phenomenal. And one of the things that I think is a great example of what we'll see more of in the future is conferences like these. Conferences like these where we're talking about the practical ways that ministry can be done in the current moment. I also feel like there was a taking for granted that we did in terms of our ability to meet and interact. And I don't think that people will take that for granted anymore. I think when you are able to reconnect with friends and family and loved ones as you see fit, as the pandemic lifts, I think people are going to take that and make those experiences far more meaningful than they maybe they ever did before. That's one other piece. But then I also see a kind of a stepping away from the numbers game that we have been engaged in for years and years, where some may call it, not me, of course not me, right? Some may call it sheep stealing, where, as one church becomes popular, that church, other churches in the area that are near it, they kind of deplete and the ebbs and flows of church membership. I think that we will see a lot more lay people out there doing evangelism with what God has called them to do, because they are free to explore those opportunities in ways that they had not been free to explore them before. So I think that's a trend that we will see coming up. And I want to say that somebody's going to find a way. I don't know what it is, but somebody's going to find a way to leverage the global nature of the Adventist Church, the fact that we are everywhere, and they're going to find a way for us to be able to utilize that fact, for us to be able to maximize our impact for reach and growth and evangelism online. We see specks of it with, Global Youth Day. It's a good example. But what would something like that look like during the pandemic? I don't know. I'm just kind of dreaming here for a second as we think about what the long-term effects and impact of what we are doing out there could be as we look to the future. Some people call this an ice storm. And in an ice storm, you hunker down, you buy some milk and water, you make sure you have some blankets, and you hunker down, you weather the storm. But if we consider that this could be an ice age, right? An ice age where you have to actually figure out a new way to exist, because we don't know what's going to happen while the ice age is going on. And then as we also consider that during an ice age, some things become extinct. Now I don't know. I'm not saying that your ministry will become extinct, right? I'm just saying some things will become extinct. There are things that we will not go back to. Let's just be clear on that. And what are those things? I don't know. But I do believe, and I err on the side, kind of lean toward the side of saying that this is more of an ice age than an ice storm. It's definitely been longer than any storm we've ever seen. And so how do we continue to function? I think that's the reason for this conference. Best ways we can function in this current environment, this new environment. And will we go back? I don't know. But yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that's a good question. Will we go back? And I personally hope we don't go back. I hope that, all the online activity that's been happening, all the connectivity with people from all over the world will continue in some way, shape, or form. And something I find interesting, I actually conducted a survey, and almost, let's say 761 people, to my knowledge, from within Ontario Conference responded to the survey, and it was asking about their online church experience. And the vast majority of people said that they thought we should continue to have church services available online, even as we are moving back into our church buildings, because it has such a broader reach than when we were just, within the four walls. So I just love the fact that, now we're seeing ministry beyond four walls. Even now, the fact that we're having this summit online, and we have people who have been tuning in from all across Canada, all across the world. It's really exciting to me. And I just want to thank all of you who have tuned in with us, especially those who have stayed with us from Thursday until now. That's a big commitment of time, but we've been really blessed by the presence of everybody who has been giving their insights, asking questions that could that other churches could learn from. And I want to thank all the speakers. You've done an amazing job. I've just gotten positive feedback from those who did individual presentations, and I know that our two guests today have also really impacted and blessed people who are watching. So I will just say that, this is just the beginning. We're hoping that someone asked, will there be more sessions like this? And we're definitely going to have more sessions like this. How many, I can't predict, but definitely look out for more. And if you haven't subscribed to our Facebook and YouTube channels, subscribe, and you will be the first to get notifications. I will be also those who have actually registered for these sessions. I'll be sending resources out to you, and I just want to put up all the speakers' contact information. That we have there. So let's just go from, I guess, my right. We'll start with Abbigale.
So you can reach me at on social media. Follow me there at bogcdesigns.com. If you have any questions or need to email me, it's info@bogcdesigns.com. And my website is www.bogcdesigns.com.
Okay, perfect. So let's move to the next person. That is Bryant Taylor. So just tell us how we can stay in touch with you.
So you can contact me there on Twitter at DrBT_Tech. You can find me on Facebook at Pastor BT Media Man, or on Instagram as Dr. BT. And I respond right back to you. Be glad to do whatever I can to help you.
He's not joking. That's real. It's dangerous for him to say that on the live, but he's not joking. He's serious about that.
Yeah, we were doing a thing Friday night where a bunch of us get together, and my phone rang, and I had to jump off of that.
That's right.
Because there was a church member who had a friend they had a Mevo and they could not connect to Facebook, and so they said, "Can you help them?" So for the next 45 minutes or so, we were there Friday night helping them get set up so they could be prepared for Saturday. So if I can help you, I'm glad to help you.
Thank you so much. And I can say that that's true as well. I've experienced it myself. And we'll move on to Felecia.
Yeah.
Felecia.
Yeah, so persons can contact me through my email, info@centerforonlineevangelism.org. I am on Facebook, Felecia Datus. You can also find me on YouTube. Felecia Datus is still my name. So those are the easiest, simplest ways that anyone can get in touch with me.
Okay, perfect. And then we have next Robert.
I try to make it easy. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can find me as @RobertKennedy3. My website is robertkennedy3.com.
Yep. That's good.
Okay.
Very easy.
And now we have Kirk.
Yep, it's all there. It's at Kirk R. Nugent on all the different platforms. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Yourcomposition.com is where I do media consulting, and my wife does web design. How it all works is the show page. KirkNugentSpeaks.com is kind of where all of it comes together. So happy to help, happy to work with you in whatever way. I am a self-employed person, so I do not necessarily work for free. I'm just letting you know that right off the top.
You don't do ministry, huh?
I do ministry.
No,
I definitely do ministry.
But no, Robert, I do ministry. Yeah, I do ministry every day of the week. It's not for free, but I do ministry every day of the week.
Well,
Christelle
I mean,
does ministry. Abbigale does ministry.
Oh yes, it's all ministry.
It's ministry. Yes.
it's all ministry, but just like something Felecia said in her presentation, we all have mouths to feed, or even if it's our own mouth to feed, so consider that.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. So I'm sad to say goodbye, but we'll be back another time. So I'm just going to close off with prayer.
Wait, before you do, may I say one thing before you do?
Yeah.
I was going to do that too.
Okay.
I want to tip my hat to you
Absolutely.
and tell you thank you very much, not just for this opportunity, but thank you very much, you and your team, for brainstorming this and putting it together.
Absolutely.
I know many of the communication directors from across the country and across the North American division and other divisions. And as Robert or Kurt said, this is the only conference who's done something like this.
Wow.
And so kudos to you all for doing that. Thank you very much. It has been very meaningful and a blessing to everyone. And I just want to tell you thank you for that.
Absolutely. I just want to agree with what BT is saying, and just, kudos to the entire team. I know that there are some folks behind the scenes right now working very hard. I know it has been a crazy weekend for you, Christelle.
Yeah.
But I'm just so excited to see what God is doing. And I think if you look in the comments, you're seeing that people were blessed, people were touched, and not just in Ontario Conference, far and wide. So again, this is kind of one of those examples of what we're talking about with digital evangelism, is that you have an idea, God places something on your heart, and as you bring that thing to life, others are able to be blessed by it. And there's just no greater calling, no greater cause for which to work towards. So kudos to you and the team. And thank you again for allowing all of us to be a part of it as well.
Thank
Ditto.
you so much.
Ditto.
And
Thank you. Excellent work.
yeah, I just also now I feel like this is the Academy Awards or something. But I want to thank the team behind the scenes, because they really outdid themselves, with
Absolutely.
setting me up here, setting Abbigale up, and just helping to run everything and ensure that it runs smoothly. So I'll just call a few people out if you're listening.
Yeah, they're ministers. They're ministers.
Yes, Edwin Martin, Orlando Poulet, Ashton Blake, FIFA, Rakoto Everson, and administration as well for just, approving of this event. So thank you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So are there any final words, like maybe words of wisdom or something you want to leave people with?
I feel like I've talked too much.
We have so many words, and that's why we're all stuck. Definitely go in the power of the Holy Spirit. As
Amen.
I said, it's not by might or by power. It's not the person with the best gadget and the biggest budget and the biggest team. It is when we are placing what we have in our hands in the hand of God and allowing the Spirit to move forward. The Holy Spirit will work with someone who has a willing heart. That's what I would say.
I'll just say two things. Transition requires identification.
Yes.
And fish where the fish are.
Yes. Be present, be courageous, and believe that God's glory will be seen.
Yeah. I would say that use what you have,
There you go.
and remember that provisions always come with God's promises.
Yes, it does.
I would also just like to add too that, for persons who might not come to our live streams or come to our church, we are walking sermons, right? So the way that we go about our lives, people are watching. So just keep that in mind, that, represent Christ in all times.
Amen.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Amen.
Okay. So thanks so much again. My eyes have been opened. Someone else said their eyes have been opened, and I've learned so much in the different areas that I can implement in my ministry. And I know that the people who are watching, even if they are not the communications or media people, it does take a village. That's something that came through very clear to me. Media and communications shouldn't just be one person or two people. It takes all of us to amplify the truth, because there's so much falsehood out there. There's so much clutter and noise out there. But if all of us just let our light shine on the internet, we can really make a difference.
Amen.
Amen.
So we will now close with prayer. Dear Lord, I just thank you for the last 4 days of our communication summit. You know that, when we first envisioned this, we had no idea how it was going to turn out, but it has been amazing. The turnout, the speakers, everything has gone very well. And we just give you all the praise and glory. And we ask that it not just be an event that we listen to and we forget, but that we will actually take the tools and the ideas that we've gained and implement them so that we can make a difference in Ontario Conference and beyond, and so that we can hasten your second coming. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Excellent.
Okay, so have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care.